Sometimes the most important moment in a legal case isn't some big, dramatic trial. It's a single, bizarre, pre-trial hearing that happens behind the scenes. And today, we're going to dissect one of those from December 18th, 2023. It was so strange and makes you question the very idea of what legal representation is supposed to be. So let's dive right in. It really sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? I mean, how is that even possible? How can a court make a huge, life-altering decision for someone when their own hand-picked official lawyer isn't even in the room? Well, that is the central mystery we're going to unravel today. And this document right here, this is where our story really kicks off. These are the official court minutes from that day. At first glance, it looks like just another boring court record. But when you look closer, you see a massive decision was made. And the list of people who were supposedly there, well, that's where the whole thing starts to feel impossible. Yeah, we're calling this the phantom hearing. Why? Because the official record describes a legal event that seems to defy all logic and, frankly, all ethics. Let's break down exactly what the paperwork says happened in that courtroom. Okay, so this right here is the heart of the chaos. The court minutes list a truly unbelievable trio of lawyers for the defendant. First, you've got Amanda Causey. She's the new official lawyer of record, but she's marked as absent. Then there's Gary Schwartz, the lawyer the defendant was actively trying to fire. He's listed as present and participating. And to top it all off, you have Jonathan Mills, a lawyer who had already withdrawn weeks before because of an irreconcilable conflict, and yet here he is, somehow back on the record. It's a complete mess. The record says that the huge decision to withdraw the defendant's plea happened because of something called an ori tennis motion. Now, don't let the Latin scare you. All that means is it was a verbal request, made right then and there, on the spot, in the courtroom. This wasn't something planned or filed in advance. It was a completely spontaneous legal move. So, the big question is, who made this on-the-spot motion? Well, it wasn't the defendant's actual chosen lawyer. It was made by the attorney who was being fired and the other one who was conflicted. And this move directly violated written instructions the defendant had given to her outgoing lawyer, saying that absolutely no motions were to be filed without her direct permission. So this wasn't just a simple mistake. It was a direct defiance of the client's wishes. Now, to really get how we ended up here, we've got to rewind the clock just a few days. The new lawyer, Amanda Causey, wasn't just taking on a regular case. Sources have called what she inherited a poison chalice. And here's the proof. This document, a joint stipulation for substitution of counsel, was filed on December 13th, a full 5 days before that crazy hearing. It formally removes Gary Schwartz and puts Amanda Causey in his place as the one and only attorney of record. So, legally speaking, she was the one in charge, period. So what made this a poisoned chalice? Well, Causey was walking into a situation where the prosecutor had already threatened on the record to refile a totally baseless drug trafficking charge if the defendant ever withdrew her plea. And here's the kicker. It was a charge that everyone involved knew had a strong defense, a valid prescription. So she wasn't just inheriting a case, she was walking straight into a trap. Which brings us right back to December 18th and the mystery of the missing lawyer. It turns out her absence wasn't an accident, it wasn't an oversight, it was a calculated legal move, a strategic retreat from what she saw as a completely illegitimate hearing. Right, so this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If she's the official attorney, why on earth wasn't she there in that courtroom fighting for her client? Well, the answer is in a document she filed just minutes before the hearing was even supposed to start. And this is just brilliant. Look at the timestamp. At 8:54 a.m., literally 6 minutes before the hearing, Causey filed this notice of unavailability. In it, she specifically asked that no proceedings be had or set while she was unavailable. This wasn't her just asking for more time. This was a formal protest, logged forever in the court record before anything could even happen. This was an absolutely genius move for 3 reasons. First, it created a permanent, undeniable record that she objected to the hearing even taking place. Second, it professionally separated her and her client from a proceeding she clearly thought was a sham. And third, and this is the most important part, it preserved her client's right to appeal any decision made that day by proving that her chosen conflict-free lawyer was deliberately shut out. So despite her formal notice, the court just went ahead with the hearing anyway, and the consequences of doing that, of proceeding without the defendant's chosen lawyer, were immediate and severe. It was basically like performing unauthorized legal surgery. This timeline really shows you the rapid-fire chain reaction. On December 13th, Causey's officially the lawyer. At 8:54 a.m. on the 18th, she files her notice. But just minutes later, the phantom hearing happens anyway. The plea is withdrawn by lawyers who had no authority to do it, and the state immediately pounces. And right here, you can see the cause and effect in black and white. On the left, you've got the court minutes that document that verbal motion to withdraw the plea. And on the right, you see the court docket showing that immediately after, that baseless trafficking charge, count 2, was slapped right back on the table. The prosecutor's threat from weeks before had just been fulfilled. Let's be perfectly clear about this charge they brought back. It was put back on the docket even though the state knew there was a strong difference. That valid prescription. In fact, months later, they just dropped the charge again. So it seems its only purpose on December 18th was to cause as much strategic damage to the defendant as possible. So what does this all boil down to? It means the official record of this hearing was, for all intents and purposes, managed in a way that sidelined the defendant's actual chosen, conflict-free lawyer. And that breakdown allowed attorneys who were either conflicted or had been explicitly fired to step in and make a critical decision that blew up the defendant's case. This whole insane episode forces us to step back and ask a much bigger question. We all hear about the right to counsel, but what does that right actually mean if it can be bypassed this easily?
I think this analogy really says it all. What happened here was like a hospital performing major surgery on you, but your chosen, trusted doctor is locked out of the building. And to make the whole thing seem official, the hospital just lets a surgeon you just fired go ahead and perform the operation instead.
Let's just map that out so it's crystal clear. The chosen doctor, Amanda Kazi, was locked out by that notice of unavailability. The fired surgeon, Gary Schwartz, was allowed to operate by making that critical motion, and the disqualified observer, Jonathan Mills, was just kind of there, giving a false sense of legitimacy to the entire procedure. Look, the right to choose your own lawyer is supposed to be one of the absolute pillars of our justice system. But this case shows what can happen when court procedures get so tangled, so completely compromised, that the one person you chose to defend you gets pushed to the side. It really leaves us with a critical question. When the process itself breaks down this badly, what's left to protect that right?